Yes, friends, let's try to look at how to do several items while trying to understand the introductory part of ICT or computer training. It could not really stretch too far to the heights that you may feel, but for the beginners, this is very fundamental, mainly for beginners. For those who have attended computer classes, at least it's okay. You can continue to search through our different tutorials on our YouTube channel. But in here, we want to look at the introductory part of the computer system. Like things that may be very fundamental, like what is a computer. I briefly have to understand what could be the inner part of the computer system. What is really there? If you talk of the computer, what do you mean? Is of course it's a machine, but we have cars. Also, those are machines. We have, for instance, microwaves and others. Those are also machines. But what could really be a difference between a computer and other machines in everyday living of our daily life? For instance, introduction to computer, we are going to cover about that. We have to look at hardware, computer hardware. We have to look at computer software. In here, we shall have to go and look into computer input devices. Then we may have to cover output devices. Of course, they are all devices, but of the two, which one should we try to emphasize on? Because you have to be able uh, to make a difference of this. Then we shall look at basic computer terms and definitions. You get it? So briefly, those are the items we shall going to be looking at. We can as well continue when we excuse me, these computer components has several names. Here we are looking at the inside part of a computer. Let's start with that. Until you have understood those things, it will be very difficult for you to understand exactly what you're doing. Because if you cannot briefly explain, for instance, if you're a student and you cannot explain what really this might be, then it means there is a very bad image. You have to be able, if you're a computer student, you have to be able to analyze. When we talk of the central processing unit, it's a part of a computer component inside the cabinet. The one that you touch is a cabinet, but inside, though we have normalized it as the central processing unit, the CPU, but inside the computer system we have what we call microprocessor, and then we have processor. Those are microprocessors. They are really the same as processors, but microprocessors are, as it is defined, micro, they are very small. For instance, if you open a computer motherboard and you try to look onto what appears onto your computer, it has chips which are very micro, some in black, others in yellow, others in different colors. So these units, when you sum them up, the processor, the microprocessor, and the processor itself, those units are what we call the brain of the computer. So that is the fundamental, that is the core of the computer, the processor. So you have to be able to define that a processor is the brain, is the core, is the foundation of a computer. So in here, we this processor executes instructions in a software program. The work of a processor is to a processor gets command from a software. For instance, if you install VCell, the one that plays music, it's a software, but it has to communicate. It has to communicate straight with the processor. The CPU's primary function include retrieving instructions from the computer's memory. Yes, computer has a memory where it keeps, but the basic function or the primary function of the CPU, which has the processor, is to retrieve data or what you have saved. Then we have random access and others. So directly, the input and output activities of the computer will all be done by the computer system. Output and input, these are done. These are processes because, for instance, if you pour water in a jerry can, that is the input. Then if you may need to add maybe some tabs and some other stuff when you want to do something. So then this brings in to be the process. Inside is the process. Those are processes. Then when you are done with mixing maybe a ingredient with water, then we have what we call output. You pour out that water maybe to a cup or any other box that you may want. So though we have input, you enter something, then you output it, you bring it out. So items found inside the computer or the CPU, we have a fan, we have a battery. What is the work of a fan? A fan, it reduces the warmth, it reduces the hotness. So we have that it can cool the processors, so we need fans to cool the processors. Then you have a battery. For instance, if you switch off your computer, you will see that when you wake up tomorrow and open it, it will read the current time. So that is the work of a battery. We have data belts that transfer data. When you touch in one of the computers, these are cables. Those are data belts. We have power belts or power cables that supply power. We have processor, a processor that does the commands. It retrieves different software commands. Then you have power supply that if you connect your computer to the socket, then it will get through power supply. So power supply will supply adequate power. It will supply the necessary power to different parts of the motherboard. So we have a motherboard. A motherboard is where all the chips and microprocessors are located. When you open inside the computer, you will see that it has a complex of mainly many of motherboards will be in green color, but they have electrons, the movement of power. They have ICs or the circuits. So all these are part of the CPU. So part of these are part of the CPU. What are those components that inside the CPU? Then you have a CD-ROM that where you insert your CD if you want to watch a movie or if you want to burn some music. Then you have hard disk. Hard disks which protect or which keep your data, because when you write your name and save it, it passes through the memory, then it goes and rocket itself on a hard disk. So those are the few items that you need to understand when it comes to introductory part of the computer system. Briefly, thanks.